Well, laughter is such a beautiful, beautiful language. I think of laughter as audible hope.
Welcome to today's webinar, Exploring How to Engage with Grace on Social Media. My name is Daniel Gilman. I'm the founder and the director of the Center for Public Speaking, where I have the sacred trust, along with our 11 other coaches all around the world, of coaching people one-on-one in their public speaking. We work with professors, politicians, pastors on their speaking and preaching, helping both veteran speakers and aspiring speakers be able to strengthen their communication. We love helping people make a beautiful difference in the world. And we love highlighting ministries and charities that are doing exactly that. And so today I want to highlight for you Voice of the Martyrs. I know for a lot of you, you're even more familiar with them than I am. My wife and I are very familiar. We donate to them. We love them because the Voice of the Martyrs is a ministry that is helping give a voice to Christians in the most difficult parts of the world. They are advocating for and engaging with the persecuted church in such difficult places in the world. Today we're highlighting them not as a paid partnership, but just because we love them. And one of our speakers does a lot of work with them. That's Beth Moore. And so in honor of her being here, we just wanted to honor a ministry that she has done a lot of work with. If you're not familiar with Voice of the Martyrs, or even if you are, I want to encourage you to check out their work afresh and consider how you can use your voice or your money or time in anything. You have so much that you bring to the table, and we would love for you to use your voice in fresh ways for those without a voice. Well, speaking of making a beautiful difference in the world, our first speaker I'll be introducing is the National Director of Advocacy and Mobilization at International Justice Mission Canada. He regularly speaks at churches and events across Canada and the world. If you haven't yet had him at your event or your church, I want to encourage you to do that because he preaches beautifully about God's magnificent heart for justice and invites all of us to be engaged in caring for those who are having their lives trampled by violence and poverty. So if you're interested in fighting against human trafficking and a myriad of other issues, please connect with Joash Thomas. In honor of his being here, we're going to give away his colleague Gary Hogan's book, The Locus Effect, and the winner is Don Hutchinson. Our next guest I'm introducing to you is Dr. Karen Swallow-Prior. She is a professor of English literature. She's an author and a speaker and means so much to my wife and I. I have, I think, all of her books. I've read them. I love them. We give them away. We'll give another one away right now. We're going to give away the beautiful cloth board covered version of The Scarlet Letter. It's such a beautiful book. It is Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter with a guide to reading it and getting the most out of it by Dr. Karen Swallow-Prior. And the winner for that is Sarah Christine. You have won this book. And then finally, we also have a speaker and author who so many of us on this call have encountered God through the pages of her Bible studies and books. Yes, I'm speaking of Beth Moore. It is such a treat to have her here with us. We're going to give away her book, Chasing Vines. And the winner of that is Khadija Paul. You just won Beth Moore's Chasing Vines. Well, I'm so glad that not only are these speakers here, but all of you are here. So if you could put in the chat box where you're tuning in from, that would mean so much to all of us. And I want to remind you that they're going to be tackling your questions in a few minutes. So please put your questions not in the chat box, but the Q&A box. And with that, please give a warm digital welcome to our three guest speakers today, who together with me will be tackling the question, how to engage on social media with grace. So the first question I have for each one of you is, so many of us feel that social media is a guilty pleasure. It's something that might be fun, but is certainly a waste of time. And yet you three who are so fiercely committed to blessing others are actively engaging on social media. So perhaps we can start with Dr. Karen Swallow-Prior. Love to hear from Joash and Beth as well. Why do you see engaging on social media as something that is worth your time?
Well, social media is a mission field in many ways. It is where people are. It is not where everyone is, especially when we think about Twitter, where the vast majority of people are not even on Twitter, but there are plenty that are there. It is a public square, and if Christians are not there, then who will be there and who will have the most dominant voice in this particular public square? It is as I said, I consider it a mission field. I consider it a place to be, to engage, and to do so carefully and hopefully, as we'll talk about, with grace.
Absolutely. Joash, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I started using social media more back when I worked as a political consultant, because working in politics, working in advocacy, you learn pretty quick that the best way to amplify a message is to get it out there in social media and just build some traction around it. So coming to the ministry world right after that, it was just this big moment of self-realization for me that if I took this so seriously in the political world for fallen candidates and policy causes, then how much more seriously should I do that for the gospel as a Christian? But also, social media, especially Twitter, it has just turned out to be this beautiful place where I get to be challenged by voices of brothers and sisters in the margins from all over the world, informed by them spiritually. So it's just a great opportunity to not just listen to those voices and be challenged by them, but also to engage with them and to lift those voices that have historically been suppressed. So that's why I'm on social.
Thanks, Joash. And Beth?
Well, I was just thinking, I agree with everything that Joash and Karen have said, all the same reasons, as far as that I do feel like it is very much a mission field, and that it is where a lot of people are, not everyone, but a lot of people are. But I am also like, you've got a full on 7 on the Enneagram here. I love people. I love the interaction. I probably am on Twitter more for the interaction and the dialogue than the monologue. I just love getting to know people. So, that makes it a natural draw to me. But I'm going to tell you, especially in the time of a pandemic, this is a time when so many people are isolated, and this is the way that they have found some company throughout these very difficult months. So I feel like it's had an especially important place the last couple of years.
Well, thanks, Beth. And thank you all three. Beth, you're mentioning being an Enneagram 7. I'm the same. And yes. It's so obvious from your social media, the way that you're here, not just to share a beautiful message, which you do share, but also for that interpersonal space. Well, the next question is I love how each of you let your followers into your life. Karen, by live tweeting from the airport about flight delays, or Beth and Joash about your Wordle successes or frustrations. How do you engage throughout the day on Twitter while also being so productive as authors and speakers?
You just throwing that out to any of us?
Just throwing that out there. Beth, why don't you start?
Okay. All right, I'll get started then. I do it according to what my schedule is. If I have a day at work where I'm not having to concentrate a lot on something, I'm doing a lot of multitasking, things that don't take a lot of concentration, I may get on a couple of times during the day, but normally I'm going off the moment I get to work, and then I don't come back on until that evening, or I don't know, I would never be able to write a book. It takes so much concentration, so much focus, but I get on every single morning, and then I'll usually, if it's a pretty typical evening, I'll get on for a little while at night, but there has to be some constraints. I have some friends that they just completely fess up to the fact that it's the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning. I cannot do that. I have to have a time of prayer and get my mind centered, because I'm going to blow it in about 15 seconds on social media if I have not had a really centering time with the Lord.
Fair. Karen, did you want to jump in, or Joash?
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. Sorry, go ahead, Karen. So for me, very much agree with what Beth just shared. Boundaries are very important. So I'm typically on, unfortunately, sometimes first thing in the morning, or one of the first things in the morning, but also then at night, to catch what some people call the late night Beth humor. So yeah, those are my optimal times of engagement. But most of my best ideas and tweets actually come to me at the most random places. So it's either when I'm taking my dog out for a walk, or in the shower, or on the porcelain throne in the morning. So whatever inspiration hits me, I just have to record it. So sometimes My wife mocks me for being on Twitter at 2 a.m. where I'm not actually tweeting, but I'm draft tweeting for the next day. So I think it's important to have boundaries while at the same time, just being aware of when inspiration strikes you, because if you're like me, you can never really predict that.
And Karen, did you want to throw anything in?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the struggle is real. I have a very irregular schedule. Every day is different depending on whether I'm in the classroom or working on a book or in a Zoom meeting. And so my workday is very unstructured. And so for Twitter, for me, provides like a quick break, especially when I'm writing. I can only concentrate for, little periods of time, and then my brain needs a break, and Twitter unfortunately or fortunately provides that great quick break. So I just try to take out chunks of time, like on the weekend I try to be on less and just more engaged in my real life with real people. Not that people on Twitter aren't real, but the ones that are in physical proximity. But it's Twitter, if I pop on it will give me some illumination or some comment or some link that I find very useful in my work. So as an information worker, I would find it very hard to be away from it for long, because it provides me so much for what I'm actually doing in my work.
Thank you. Well, along similar lines, so many of us who are aspiring authors are constantly being told to post more, and it's tough. You three post substantive content frequently. It's impressive. So how do you come up with what to tweet? Beth, would you like to get us started?
I would say the same thing that Joash said a few minutes ago, which is that it's sort of like what comes to me when it comes to me, and it's not always, maybe not even usually, a great idea. But what I try to do in the morning is just bring some kind of, if there is that sense of God's leadership, I'll try to bring some kind of emphasis normally in the morning that is of a spiritual quality. And I'm with Joash when he said a little while ago, if the later in the evening it gets, the more playful I'm usually going to get. And that's when I'm going to get in a ton of trouble. So that I have to really watch over. But I think probably because you have communicators here, that we're just very wordy people. So we just have more words than we know what to do with, and they end up on Twitter. But it just is sort of like, after a while you learn, okay, this is kind of the Twitter sort of stuff. And then other things you think, nah, that's Instagram. But it's just kind of an overflow of words. And I find, I'll tell you this, and I wonder if my colleagues agree with this, the harder I try at a good tweet, the worse that it is. I do better if it's just a little bit spontaneous.
Amazing. Let's go to the next question, actually. Grace is often thought of as meaning delicate, polite, deferential, perhaps. As we dive into the question, how to engage with grace on social media, what does grace mean? And what does it look like to engage with grace on social media? And Joash, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, happy to. So, for me as a Christian, again, the perfect embodiment of grace to me is our Lord and Savior Jesus, right? And we see in John 1 that Jesus was both full of truth and full of grace, right? And so I think there's something to that, where to be full of grace also means to be full of truth. And to be full of truth also means to be full of grace, because, Jesus was the perfect embodiment of both. Also, I feel like the philosophy of the organization I work for also informs my understanding of grace, because, I think very, very often people confuse grace with politeness or being nice, or, just talking about your shoes and social media, or, just like lighthearted topics, right? But if we look at the life of Jesus, the thing that strikes me the most is he wasn't afraid of running towards the most difficult things and being truthful about it in a very graceful way, right? So I think there's definitely lessons there, but it cracks me up, because as we were promoting this on social media, people were trying to share receipts of the 3 or 4 of us blocking people and using that as an act of gracelessness. I don't quite agree with that, because I think blocking someone on social media can actually be a form of grace. A lot of times, a lot of times, really, in my case, it's to protect people from provoking my future gracelessness. So that's an act of grace. But grace also includes justice and accountability. It can't be letting people off the hook and not giving them their due. It includes calling out bullies, blocking them, reporting them. Those are forms of grace too, because when you do that, you're giving them a chance to hopefully repent and turn from their dark ways. So yeah, those are just a few thoughts that come to mind.
Thanks, Joash. Karen or Beth, would you like to jump in as well?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's missing on most social media, because of the nature of social media, is our understanding that there are people behind the avatars and behind the words on the screen. And so a rule of thumb that I think is a way of giving grace is to not act in any way toward someone on the screen that I wouldn't if they were in my living room or if I were in their living room. That can be very hard, but there are things that we don't do, or even out on the street. Like if someone is standing out on the street and they're carrying a sign and they're saying something that I disagree with, I might engage in conversation with them, but I don't just run up and yell at them and run away. And I don't insert myself into a conversation that other people are having in some rude way. I certainly, if I want to become involved in a conversation, I enter in a polite, engaging way. I don't, hit and run with my words. And so much of social media is that. That's what it's designed for. And so I'm not necessarily blaming people for doing what the medium is designed for, but we have to be intentional about maintaining our humanity and modeling our humanity and keeping our humanity in this kind of medium that tries to strip us of our humanity. So to me, that's the biggest form of grace, is to treat people in the same way that we would if we were in person as much as possible. And that includes all the things that Joash said, that we do sometimes have to remove ourselves from certain people who are toxic, or protect other people from harmful words of others. And that's probably where I've erred the most, is especially on Facebook, where I would allow anyone to have it was kind of a free speech zone. And I would allow people to say very hurtful things to other people until someone made me realize that was harmful, that I don't have to allow everything on my page. And so I've become a little stricter about that because of the hurt that can be done. Yes. So that's a little bit of grace, how I think about it.
Hey, thank you so much. And Beth?
Well, I require a lot of grace. And so I have to be reminded by the Holy Spirit that I need to give it, because I really do. I need a lot of it from people. I use many words, and with many words, there is just a lot of folly. But one of the things that I try to do is that I try to call people by name. Where I use their first name when I talk to them, because it reminds me this is a person with a name and with problems. They have hurts. I remember when somebody I had this guy that he could not miss an opportunity to insult me, or to he was just brutal. And I remember one time when I finally said to him, I said, you know what, I'm going through a hard season. I let up on me, because I was in so much pain in my own heart. And I try to remember that everybody's got fears and problems and insecurities, or just they're having a bad day. And if I can keep that in mind, I'll also tell you this, Daniel, I bet that Joash and Karen could both count on both hands and all their fingers how many people have been won over as friends because of mutual dispensing of grace. I mean, people, very unexpected people that I have come to love on Twitter that I did not like at all. And I'm just about your natural inclinations, because we went past that problem far enough to try to hear one another, just give one another a little bit of space to speak, try not to get offended. It would be sometimes a very simple thing of me just saying back to them, or they saying something like this to me, like, do you like dogs? Maybe we could like dogs together. Do you like coffee? Do you garden? Do you, just some of those things. And one other thing that helps me, I love what Karen said about trying to think who would be in my den. One of the reasons why I refuse to be policed by people that say, she talks to so-and-so and she talks to so-and-so. No, I'm not playing that game. I'm not playing that game. And one of the things I try to think of is if I were standing in a Starbucks line and it was really long, would I talk to anyone in that line? Right. Of course I would. Would I first interview them about what are your beliefs on the following things? Absolutely, I would not. I would just have encounters with people. I would just talk with people. And so there is a lot that takes place just in the pure grace of friendliness. And I try so hard, and I make so many mistakes. I don't live up to this. Many times, but I try so hard. I pray for the Lord to give me an unusual and extraordinary love for the people I get to serve. And I really am on there. My hope is to serve. And so just like, help me to love people, help me to love people. And that I think helps a lot.
Well, Beth, I love how you reframe the question, because when we ask how to engage with grace, we're often putting myself in the position of power of saying, how can I dispense grace? But as you open your answer saying, no, you need grace, that we need
I
grace.
need it so bad.
That we're recipients of grace.
I need it so bad. I made a colossal mistake back in 2019. I spoke out about something a video that went viral. I assumed what most people assumed, but of course, Big Mouth has to say something. And I didn't use names, but it was very, very clear. And it was the video clip was a misrepresentation of what had happened. And I took down the most pointed part of it as fast as I could, and then tried to figure out what to do from here. But just having to own up to, man, I really messed up here. I really made some assumptions that were wrong, and I am very faulty at times. And to just, man, even as we have this conversation today, when Paul talked about being the least of all the saints, I'm the least of all of these, because I get in so much more trouble than they do. And it's because I don't watch my mouth at times when I should. But I'm very, very grateful for the people that have hung in there. And when I've gotten to come back and go, okay, I have blown it, I really need to apologize. Most of the time, it's been received, and I'm thankful for that. So I want to receive it. I want to do the same thing and give it back.
Thank you. We're gonna just ask one question to each one of you. So we'll do 3 more questions, but just each one. And then we're gonna have a brief pause and then dive into the questions that people are already submitting. And if you haven't submitted your question yet, please do. Joash, I'll start with you. So much of social media is people self-promoting. And in your line of work with International Justice Mission, you are seeking to give voice to and advocate for those who are often marginalized and muted. How do you use social media to do just that?
Yeah, I think, it really starts with me putting myself aside first and reminding myself that I am not the most important person in this universe as I step onto my Twitter app. Because, there are people who are oppressed and marginalized way more than I ever will be, I ever have. And the privilege that I've been blessed and entrusted with, is just a whole other level. Even though I've had my share of, pain and heartache as a person of color in majority culture spaces where people don't look like me. So I think it's important to remind myself of the fact that there are people who have it worse, who are going through really difficult things. And also look for those voices, right? So one of the reasons why I really enjoy interacting with Beth and Karen is because as women, they have less privilege in society than I do, right? And they deal with way more toxicity than I ever will as a man at the end of the day. And so how can I learn from them? How can I be challenged by their voices? How can I be formed by their experiences and their suffering? And how do I elevate voices of more marginalized brothers and sisters, like brothers and sisters in the Black church, people who don't have a voice in social media, but whose perspectives need to be heard, like people in slavery and violence today. So really just looking for those voices that are there, being challenged by them, learning from them, but also elevating those voices and sharing those voices. And I'm grateful for the ways in which Karen and Beth have done that with me. And I see it as a responsibility to be able to pass that on.
Hey, thanks so much, Joash. Dr. Karen Swallow-Prior, the algorithms seem to be designed in order to show us on our news feeds exactly what we will like and retweet. It easily, therefore, puts us into an echo chamber. How do you break through that? And I have seen you break through that, where you're engaging with people from such diverse values and backgrounds and positions from yours. How do you break through that echo chamber?
Well, it's very intentional, and I know everyone uses Twitter differently, and we all have to have different boundaries. But from the start, I just follow a lot of people. If I can figure out, and it gets harder, but if I can figure out someone's a normal, decent human being who is engaging in goodwill, then I will. And they don't tweet a lot of sports. That's like one part. Then I will follow them. Because it's a social network. That's what it's there for. And they're also for information. And so I learned so much from reading what people I disagree with, who aren't in the same camp as me. I learned so much from them. So Twitter is a huge educational forum for me, and I'm an educator. But it does have to be intentional because of the algorithm. So just simply following people, engaging with people, that changes the algorithms. Again, I just think we have to be intentional about it.
Hey, thank you so much. And yeah, you're engaging with people on so many different viewpoints from your own is such a refreshing piece of the Twitter sphere. Beth Moore, as a public speaking coach, I hear from so many of our clients that there's this internal voice in their head when it comes to social media engagement, or even more so public speaking, that says you have no right to be on this stage. You don't have anything to say, sit down. And you are someone, and it breaks my heart to see how this isn't just an internal voice that you might have to battle, but that you've had people external to yourself be publicly saying those things to you. And so how do you manage to be able to press through and find your voice and continue on in the ministry that you've been called to?
One of the things that we're having to accept right now is that there is going to be trolling. There are going to be people that are just getting on for that purpose. So I wish I had known that. This is something I would love to talk to Karen about sometime, because we have been on for a long time. And I bet she would feel like I do, in that I wish I had known years ago, okay, part of this is just people that do this just for the pleasure of it, just trolls, just people that are not even who they are. They are faking who they are here. They're a different person elsewhere. I wish I would have known early on that there was that element. But for me, the closer gets to the world that I most operate in, then the more painful it gets. In other words, if it's coming out of my own community of people, that is quite painful. But I just continue to think, we just have to persevere past it, and we can't let it just completely tear us apart, because it is a fact of life. It is just the heat in the kitchen if we're going to stay in this particular realm of ministry or of dialogue. And one of the things that I'll tell you, two things very quickly. Let me say this. I have found that there is something that often something real that often takes place on the medium, because do you know that for the people that I've interacted with, like Joash, like Karen, like so many others that I've had the chance to meet face to face, do you know what they really were what they seemed, and I really did like them, if anything, more than I had liked them on Twitter. So I love that. I love that there's that opportunity. I don't want to miss it. But what other point that I want to make that is very important is that there was a pastor, and from my own world, that just, I mean, everything I said, he said the opposite. He just argued with me. He just was constant. Well, at some point, about a year and a half ago or so, he had a health crisis. And it went out on Twitter. It looked extremely serious. And I just went to my face before the Lord and wept and thought, I said, Lord, just please heal him and restore him. And then I just kept checking into Twitter to his people. How is he doing? How is he doing? How is he doing? Do you know, I say this tongue in cheek. I hope somebody doesn't take me seriously, but I've never been able to dislike him in the same way again. And I say that with a little bit of a tease, but I really do mean it in a way, in that because I prayed for him, because suddenly all of those things didn't mean anything. His life was at stake. Then when we tried to go back to normal, which would have been that we would have been at odds with one another, it never worked quite the same, because I had seen that humanity in him. And I think probably he had seen it as well. And so it really was a game changer. And the more you do that, it's one reason why my favorite follows, Joash and Karen both do this. And my favorite follows are always going to be like this, that they share more than just one platform or one just message with their life. It's sort of a little more of what Paul was talking about when he said that we shared with you not only the gospel of Christ, but our very lives, because you had become very dear to us. And I love that. And so if there's one thing that really may annoy me about one follower, there's something else about him that I really, really like. And so there's always going to be something there, always.
Well, thank you so much. And Beth, Karen, Joash, thank you for how you use your platform, you use your voice, both on social media and in public speaking, and Beth and Karen in your writing, in order to strengthen and minister to other people, both those whom you agree with and those who don't. And it's so beautiful. And I know it means so much to so many of us to see your endurance, even when people have thrown negative and trolling words at you, that you haven't quit, and that you continue to fulfill the call that God has placed on your life and your voice. We're going to take a really quick break. So the three guest speakers, feel free to mute for a moment. I'm going to introduce the next offering we have, and then we're going to continue on. Offering might be the wrong word, because anyone from church is thinking this is a collection. It's not. I just meant an announcement. The next event we're going to be doing is not a webinar, but is the public speaking masterclass, or I should say the public speaking master course. This is a 9-week course that will be online. That is not like a webinar where you're, as attendees, more passive, but this is a true public speaking coaching experience where you're going to be on a Zoom call with these global speakers and coaches who are going to be helping you develop your public speaking. We're not focused, like some other companies are, that on trying to get rid of your ums and ahs and these technical things that don't add to your engagement. We're focused on trying to make you a better storyteller, a more engaging communicator. That some of you are professors, and there's no matter what you teach, there's no reason that it needs to be dry. We can help you be more engaging, more interesting, to be able to make a more beautiful difference in people's lives. The element of this course I'm most excited for is it flows from the fact that my coaches and I have heard from the questions that our current clients ask us. We've noticed that there are a myriad of challenges, questions, issues that women speakers face that the male coaches on our team have never even considered. It's really humbling to encounter that. And so we're sensitive to that throughout the different weeks of the course, but we're going to have a specific week, a specific course evening, where we're going to feature Dr. Jo Vitelli. She's one of my favorite apologists in the whole world. And she is going to be speaking on empowering women speakers. And this is not an evening just for the women attendees. We're going to have all the male attendees there too, because as we hear more of the challenges and questions that women speakers face, it's going to help us, I hope, to be more wholesome, more helpful to making the public speaking world more welcoming and a more wholesome place for women speakers as well. It's going to be such a good course. We have the global apologist, Dr. Mike Lacona, Oxford University Press published apologist that he is, Alonzo Julian Paul, Laura Buchanan. A lot of these are people who are so precious to so many of us. I'd love for you to be part of the course. And so my colleague Maddie will place the information link in the chat box, and we'll also make sure to email it to all of you, because this is one of the most challenging things. It starts next week. So I know a lot of you already have your plans. It's going to be Thursday evenings from starting next Thursday for the following Thursdays. I hope you could be there. Well, with that, I'm going to give away 2 more books. The one is, I'll just pull it up right here. The first book we're giving away here is Chasing Vines, and this goes to Valerie Dean. So Chasing Vines by Beth Moore is going to Valerie Dean, and then Dr. Karen Swallow-Pryor's Tess of the D'Urberville goes to Drew Latin. So you both won those books, and I want to welcome our speakers back up as we begin tackling the questions that you all have submitted. Okay, here is the first question. How do you discern when to engage, when to ignore in your responses? Karen, why don't you take this one first? How do you discern when to engage and when to ignore in your responses?
So I want to share that that's been a real challenge and struggle for me. I'm a teacher. I've been in the classroom for 30 years. So for me, if a student raises their hand or has a questioning look on their face, I'm going to respond. And so I have always treated social media the same way, and have always wanted to respond to anyone who raises a hand or makes a comment or makes a reply. Now, with so many followers now, that's, probably not good stewardship of my time. But also, as Beth was saying before, now that I realize that some of these responses are just trolls, and that's actually not an act of grace to affirm them in their trolling or in their negativity, then I have to, it's hard for me to not try to reply to everyone, because of my training and my formation as a teacher who would never ignore anyone who says anything, but that's just not practical. And so I have to be wiser, and I'm working on that, and wiser in who I respond to and when I respond. And also it does become a matter of stewardship of time and energy, because I find now that even if I just reply to a friend, a funny response, that's a good conversation. Well, if that brings 10 more or 20 more or 100 more replies, then I'm sucked in, which is just what social media requires us to do, or wants us to do. And so I'm learning to be a better steward of my time and my presence on social media in those ways, and deciding when and when not to respond.
Thank you, Karen. Beth or Joash, do you want to jump in as well? No pressure.
Joash, you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, I was trying not to follow that. That was really profound. I was like, what do I say? No, but I think I've been getting better at not engaging with the negative trolls, and I think that's been a work of sanctification in my heart from the Lord. Just not to engage with them, because I think it really helps to start with the question, what do I hope to accomplish from this, right? Am I trying to persuade someone, or am I just here on social media to encourage people and exhort people? And so for me personally, I see my lane more in the encouragement, exhorting lane. And there are people who that's not going to speak to, and that's okay. I have to be comfortable with not pleasing everyone, and blessing the people that I'm called to bless, and move on from there. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that and realize that not everyone's gonna appreciate who I'm speaking to, what I'm speaking about. And so my tactic with negative trolls off late has increasingly become to just block without further engagement. Obviously, I try to go, I probably have more time than Beth and Karen for sure. So I go to their tweets and I see what their other tweets look like, how much they troll others, and how proactive they are versus reactive, and I make decisions based off that as well. But I have been getting better at just being okay with not engaging folks anymore, and just blocking and blessing them and moving on.
Amazing.
That's so good, Joash. I was thinking too, it's really good to go and see, is this the habit of this person? Can I already tell that they are coming in with a negative attitude from the top because we don't agree on the following things? But other times, you'll realize that somebody is coming for the attention. So if they can get you wrapped up in a conversation because they want hits on their own social media, that becomes a trap. And it's like, try not to fall into that trap. But I was raised in a really large family, and we were from the very beginning seasoned in how to be able to have conflict and kiss and make up. And the same would be true in my household. We have 4 very opinionated family members, and we could disagree about all sorts of things and still get along well. So I try to listen to the tone, and it's hard because you're reading words, and every now and then I will read something smart aleck into somebody's tone that wasn't there. They'll say, no, I didn't mean it that way. And I have to do that with people, where I'll go, that really sounded like a smart aleck, and I didn't mean it to sound that way. But if it's in good faith, and if I can answer quickly, I so agree with Karen on the time factor, because it's like I have a job, and I do consider social media to be part of it. But if the question is going to be one that takes a thread of 14 tweets, or if there's just no way to satisfy it, but if it's a good faith question, I don't need them to come at me so much with just like with any honor or great esteem or respect, just decency. Then, if I can answer it, I'm going to. And sometimes it works into a friendship.
Yeah, thank you. Here's our next question. Are you ever terrified that someone will misconstrue something you tweet? I find it so hard to write much substance out of fear that some variant interpretation for what I say might be found by other people. If you were ever afraid of that, how did you, or how do you overcome it? Beth, do you want to get us started?
Well, they're absolutely right that there are things to fear, because it absolutely does happen that way. And there's just always going to be somebody that is going to take offense. You don't even know that sometimes that you have been in the least offensive. And one of the things that we talk about often, you see this word used, it's a great term on social media, especially Twitter, is that whataboutism. Well, what about it? That you didn't, because you said this, but you didn't also bring up this, then you're disqualified. It's also oh my goodness, all of us know the trap that we get into when we think we need to comment on everything, because people go, oh, your silence is deafening. It's just like, oh my gosh. Sometimes what you have to do, if you're going, especially if you are in some kind of communication, some kind of public speaking, this is a very important medium. So you have to take the risk of making mistakes and know you're going to. And when you realize that you made one bad enough to go back and go, I'm going to have to take this whole thing down because I just didn't say it the way I meant it, or I'm not clear about what I'm saying, or whatever, pull it down. Or sometimes just continue on in the thread where you try to clear it up a little bit and go, okay, yeah, I had not thought of that. But it's going to be a constant risk. And not only that, it's going to happen. In other words, it will at times turn into exactly what you feared, which is that you're going to mess it up. But you get back out there and dialogue again. If one thing, when you were saying earlier, Daniel, I wanted to say something, especially when Joash brought up the women and speaking. One reason why I have tried to stay on after times of just where it would just be like a pile on, and I would usually have started it, and somehow, I don't deny that, but it would just be a pile on. But I would think of young women, and I would think, I bet this occurs to Karen too, that I think they're watching to see if we can be bullied off. And they're watching to see if women will be just enduring under these kinds of things. And so I'll hang in there because I just don't want a younger woman to see an example of being able to be bullied off.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that means so much to so many of the women we work with, but I'm especially thinking of my little sister. She's in her young 20s. She's a phenomenal speaker and communicator. And you mean so much. You mean so much to all of us, but I think just specifically how much you mean to her.
Well, she does to me too.
Yeah.
You can tell her I think about her every day, because I think about these young women every single day.
Thank you. Oh, okay. The next question is right here. I have a theory that women and people of color are disadvantaged because both groups have been harassed and bullied more frequently and to a higher degree, yet they're expected to be more submissive or tolerant of that abuse, especially because of their stature. So my question this person asks is, do you think this is correct? And how do you protect yourself and your tribe?
Yeah, I can jump into that. I definitely think that's true. People may, use all kinds of academic terminology to try to categorize myself and others who believe that. But I think it's, if you're empathetic, if you have the spirit of discernment, you will see that to be true, even if you're not a woman or a person of color. If you don't believe me, if you don't believe any of us on this, talk to people of color that who are in your life. Hopefully, talk to women in your life and ask them, in real life outside of social media, what they have to put up with. So I think for me, what's been really helpful as a person of color is just boundaries, right? So how do I know when to stop engaging with someone? So, like Karen said, I'll engage with someone a lot of times as long as they're good faith. But, if it starts off with a bad faith vibe, or, if the conversation takes a turn towards bad faith, where they're assuming my motives, where they're assuming what I'm not saying, things of that nature, then, it's good to just put a stop to the conversation there and, just move on. So, those would be my thoughts for that.
Thanks, Joash. We can go to the next question, or Beth or Karen, do you want to? Okay, let's go to the next question. Karen, I'm going to ask this one specifically to you. I find it a bit dishonest to have, and there's no specific reason I'm asking this, by the way. I just have to pick someone. I find it a bit dishonest to have someone manage your social media, especially Twitter. However, I understand busy schedules. How can we manage our social media in an honest way? Should social media managers do a disclosure, or should their page have a disclosure?
That's a good question, because I think there are many people who use media and as public people use assistants in different ways. And I think the easy answer is to all of these questions is to just be honest. And so, I do have a friend who's very busy writing and has a social media manager, and that's like on her profile or whatever, and it's public. And so I think we just acknowledge when someone is doing something in our lives or helping us in some way. And people use social media in different ways. I can't imagine myself doing that, because I have a use for social media that that helps me being me. But if anything like that were to happen, I would just simply be transparent about it.
Amazing. Next question. What is something that has changed about the way you engage on social media today from when you first began? And Beth, why don't we have you start this?
I think as much as anything, the need to comment on everything has changed. I think in the early years, especially, it just sort of came to such a peak in in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, where it just like everyone was expected to comment on every issue. And it turned us into a madhouse, because we are not experts on a multitude of issues and conversations. So here we are talking about something that's way out of our wheelhouse. And I think that has changed a lot, where I felt under pressure to say something, because people would want you, don't you have a comment here? And I fell into that trap more in the early years than I do now, because I may have strong feelings about it, but it's like, I don't feel the need to get on and speak to that, where other things, man, I really do. If it's issues with women, particularly young women, and I feel like they're just being pounced on, then that's very hard for me to resist. But I try as much as I can not to feel the need to get in on everything. That has changed a lot. And then what else changed a lot, and this has been so for the good, I've loved this aspect of it. I think when I first began on Twitter, I followed other people that were in my field, especially because there would just be the social media police, the religious police that would go in and see. They check on everyone that you follow, everyone that you talk to, all of that kind of thing. So, but and I've had a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun with a lot of my peers that are authors or speakers or communicators or whatever. But I'll tell you the truth. The most fun that I have had is getting to know people that are completely out of my field. Maybe they cook. Maybe they don't have any, they're just on there because they like social media. Maybe they like cornbread. I don't know. But I love that. That's changed a lot. I really do enjoy just the mutual conversation with people that are not necessarily big social media influencers. The higher it gets up into that. Now, I do all my own Twitter and all my own Instagram. And I've often said, because people have said, do you do your own Twitter? Are you kidding? Would anyone do this for? Would anyone else get me in the same amount of trouble I get myself in? But I love that part of it. I love just getting to know people that are just living the thing, just trying to live life and find some quality in it.
Thank you. That's so fun. Joash, Karen, what are some ways that you have changed the way you engage on social media today from when you first started?
Well, to keep it brief, because I've changed a lot, and because when I first got on social media, so Facebook, when the first year it came out, Twitter for 10 or 11 years ago, I've changed. I don't mean, obviously I've grown, but my position has changed. And I'm a very slow learner. And I'm not saying that in a funny way, like I truly am. And change is hard for me. And so when I was no one that anyone had ever heard of, with 100 followers on Twitter who were mainly my students, and we were making jokes about Jonathan Swift's 18th century scatology, that's different now for me, being, a professor in a denominational seminary and having a big platform and having people constantly looking for me to make mistakes or make a misstep, or if I just simply, say something without the clarity that's needed, which is often, there's a lot at stake, not just for me personally, but for the institution I represent, and for the faith and the Christ that I represent. And so I've had to change a lot simply because my own role has grown, my platform has grown, and it's been hard because at heart, I'm a funny, snarky person who likes to joke around and talk to people and try to understand more. And it's just, I just can't do that in such a public space, at least not as carelessly as I would have 10 years ago. And so I'm trying to grow into that. I need to grow and mature. And so I say that as an encouragement to people because the world is changing, and we do sometimes need to adjust with it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Joash?
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's just like sanctification in any other area where I haven't mastered it completely, but I feel like I'm a lot closer to it than I was when I started, is the area of just being more proactive than reactive with anything that I'm putting out there. I feel like when I'm caught in reactivity, it can just be so easy to go down a rabbit trail and a rabbit hole of responding to the controversy of the day, responding to, just something silly that someone said, which happens really every other day, every hour, right? So it's all about taking a step back and, asking the question of, is this actually going to help people, hurt people? Am I choosing to wake up with violence this morning? And I think just being more proactive helps in all those areas. because it's better thought out and less caught up in the heat of the moment.
Thank you. Well, there's so many questions pouring in. I noticed that some of them are not really so much questions as much as someone such as my friend Sheila writing in saying all that you mean to them. And then at the end it says, I don't know if this is a question, but yeah, Beth, Karen, Joash, you guys mean so much to me and to so many others through your humility and seeking to embody grace through social media. I have one last question, and this comes from something, Beth, more you said earlier about sometimes kind of accidentally reading in sarcasm into something someone might be saying.
Yes.
It's so hard to be able to engage in humor because it's so easy for things we're saying to be taken the wrong way. And I've noticed that you three are both saying meaningful, beautiful, gospel-centered things, and you're hilarious. Dr. Karen Swallow-Prior, you're one of the most, if I can say, quirky and hilarious people I think are on the internet. And so how do the three of you seek to have that sense of fun, playful, and humor while knowing that it can also be taken so wrong? So this is a question not just for all the people who are interested in growing our social media presence, but for me specifically, because I think the same question applies to how to engage well in our family WhatsApps, how to be hilarious. We all want to be hilarious, but make sure we're not being taken the wrong way. So what advice would you have for people who over text, WhatsApp, or social media, how to be funny without hurting people?
Well, laughter is such a beautiful, beautiful language. I think of laughter as audible hope, that something in us could just let go and throw our heads back and laugh. And I would have said this within the last 48 hours on Twitter, that I mainly stay on it because there are so many funny people on it and just quirky people on it. And just that really is my biggest draw to it, because I just think they're to find a little common ground to laugh about. But I think that it begins with being able to laugh at ourselves. And I think it's why sometimes I have to come back around and say to somebody, I didn't mean that ugly, because I'm going to tease with them like I would tease about myself and make fun of myself a lot, that you have to not take yourself so seriously. And then if you can tell that you said it in such a way, oh, I've done it so many times, you just have to come back and go, okay, that was inappropriate. I didn't think about how much that was going to hurt somebody. And I'm just sorry.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
Joash,
Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'll just say real quick. I think Twitter can be a really dark place. Social media can be a really dark place. That's that lacks joy and is humorless. So anything that I can do to poke fun at myself, to not take myself so seriously, to laugh about things that aren't offensive to anyone. I think it's great to engage in those things, and I think that's a way of blessing people. So I love it when Beth doesn't take herself too seriously, Karen doesn't take herself too seriously, when folks share their Wordle scores of absolutely being brutalized by Wordle. That's funny, and that brings joy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would just add, the most important thing is to not take ourselves too seriously and to laugh at ourselves more than anyone else. But that also, the flip side of that goes back to the other things we were talking about. The part in me that wants to defend myself and explain myself over and over and clarify everything is also the part that's taking myself too seriously. So sometimes just giving that up and not replying, not responding is me learning not to take myself so seriously.
Well, thank you. And thank you all three for seeking and striving to embody the things we're talking about. Beth, I just tweeted, I know I shouldn't be multitasking because we're doing I'm hosting this event with you right now, but I just tweeted your quote. I think of laughter as audible hope. So I hope it's okay. I was multitasking, tweeting while talking about Twitter, but you three are people who are, with your day job, with your speaking and writing, are speaking that hope to those of us around the world. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busyness to laugh with us and explore with us how to engage on Grace with social media. So from everyone tuning in, thank you so much to you three.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely.
Good joy. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
For sure. We're so grateful. So thank you everyone for tuning in. More than 1,000 people registered for today's webinar. And what makes me so grateful in that is not just the fact that, oh, lots of people, but the fact that it shows so many of us are asking the same question. How do we engage with grace on social media? I submit to you that just asking that question, and as we go to engage, thinking through, am I embodying grace, is part of the equation. So thank you again, everyone, for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you all in the future, maybe even on Twitter. Okay, take care.